The trend we're seeing overall in terms of sanctioning is to try to be as precise and as targeted as possible. That is to minimize the harm to a civilian population in association with sanctioning, and to have sharp sanctions against perpetrators of violence, to hold them accountable for their own actions, and also to sanction those institutions that are involved in violence, and to sanction the flow of resources that allows violent regimes to hurt their own people and people in other countries. And as we move in the direction of more and more precise sanctions, I think that's broadly speaking a positive development. But we need to ensure precision and enforcement, that we're not missing things, if you like, or allowing holes in the process that render the sanctions that have been put in place ineffective. And we also need to ensure that enforcement is in place as required and is effective. Another trend we've seen is the adoption throughout the world of Magnitsky Sanctions legislation, which is part of that trend of narrowing in precision and targeting those responsible for violence, but it's in particular aiming sanctions at those involved in gross violations of human rights. In the past, those involved in violations of human rights in other parts of the world would generally have stayed in their own countries. But in the globalized world we live in today, it's much more common for oppressors, oligarchs, maybe their family members, to take their ill-gotten gains and try to use them to vacation, to attend school, to do other things in various other parts of the world, including to come to the United States, Canada, Europe, etc. So Magnitsky sanctions provide us with a unique opportunity to try to deter human rights abuses by saying to those who are involved in gross violations of human rights, you're not going to be able to engage in this kind of travel, you're not going to be able to move your money, you're not going to be able to spend time in Canada or in other parts of the world if you cross a certain threshold in terms of violations of human rights. Another reason why these types of sanctions are very effective is because when people are part of autocratic violent regimes, I think often they realize that these regimes can turn on those within them. As the saying goes, sometimes the show trial comes for you. And so these corrupt officials that have been involved in violence, they're often thinking in the back of their minds, what is the escape hatch that I could have if I need to leave my country at some point? Can I move my money? Can I create a kind of golden parachute that will allow me to leave the regime I'm a part of if I need to? But Magnitsky sanctions, by sanctioning individuals who are involved in human rights abuses, are a way of saying that if individuals cross a certain threshold in terms of violation of fundamental human rights, or if individuals if individuals are identified as being involved in violence against civilians, human rights violations, or threats to international peace and security, that they could be sanctioned and therefore prevented from finding that escape hatch. And one sort of corollary of this point about people maybe wanting to escape at some point, but being told they won't be able to escape, and using that as a way of deterring human rights abuses. One obvious corollary of that is that in order for these sanctions to be effective, they have to be imposed in coordination. If Canada, the U.S., and our partners in Europe are sanctioning different people, then those that may be sanctioned in one place but not another still have that escape option available to them. But if like-minded countries are coordinated, then it shuts off the potential options of escape for those involved in human rights abuses, and therefore it puts pressure on them to stop or at least to limit their violations of fundamental human rights in order to because they know that there will be significant consequences for them if they persist in this direction. I think we have a big problem with impunity right now, with people that are involved in human rights violations believing they'll get away with it, with not having effective systems of holding people accountable. And Magnitsky sanctions are a key tool for countering that. So it's in that spirit that Senator Andrzejczyk and in this place my colleague from Selkirk, Interlake Eastman, put forward the Magnitsky Sanctions bill, which initially received a kind of cold response from the government, but eventually was passed unanimously. And with Bill S-8, if an individual is subject to sanctions, including under the Magnitsky Act, they're also then considered inadmissible to Canada. So it lines up inadmissibility provisions with sanctions provisions. So this is positive. But the problem is that the Magnitsky Act and other sanctions tools give the government tools to use for sanctioning individuals, but unfortunately they're tools that the government has been reluctant to use. The government has, for a number of years now, actually not used the Magnitsky Sanctions tool. The Magnitsky Act, when it was passed, did provide the government with tools for sanctioning human rights abusers under the Special Economic Measures Act, and they have done some of that. But the absence of the use of the Magnitsky Act is, I think, troubling, especially because the Magnitsky Act is an important mechanism of coordination among allies. Multiple countries have a Magnitsky Act, and if we're able to use our Magnitsky Act and coordinate with other countries in the use of their Magnitsky Acts, we can send a stronger, clearer message of deterrence towards human rights abusers. And yet this government has been very reluctant to use a tool that they've been given by Parliament and encouraged by Parliament to use. Recognizing the failure of this government to use the Magnitsky Act sufficiently, we actually have put forward a new private member's bill. It's just passed this place, and it's on its way to the Senate, Bill C-281, which creates a parliamentary trigger mechanism that allows a committee in this House or in the Senate to pass a motion calling on the government to list an individual under the Magnitsky Act, and the government has to provide a response to that committee within a time frame that's consistent with the time frame for response to committee reports and standing orders, but they have to provide that response regardless of, for instance, if there's a prorogation. So we recognize the value of the coordination that we're seeing in Bill S-8, but like any other sanctions tools, it's only as good as its use. And if this government is failing to use that tool, then we're still going to have a significant problem.